Hello, welcome back to another Doctor Who Big Finish video. In today's Doctor Who Big Finish video, I'll be taking a look at this, Shadow of the Daleks #1, seeing the 5th Doctor in the Time War. Now, Shadow of the Daleks #2 has just been released, so I thought I'd better review Shadow of the Daleks 1 in preparation for my review of Shadow of the Daleks #2. So this series is essentially 8 half-an-hour adventures seeing the 5th Doctor in the Time War. But it's a lot more intriguing than that. It's sort of like an anthology release, but it's sort of a mini-series of events. It does feel like an anthology, but it has it's part of this big grand narrative. That's essentially the structure for Shadow of the Daleks. So let's look at the first 4 stories, what feature within this. So the first 4 stories, what a feature within this release. Then the side of the release, the world and interlude. So without further ado, let's look at the presentation for this release. Then we'll go on to my thoughts on each of the 4 stories. So taking a look at the presentation for Shadow of the Daleks #1, we've got this circular motif there. We've got the Duke, a building of Florence, the TARDIS in this sort of fiery background there, the Dalek and another Dalek there. It's quite nice to see an Emperor Guard Dalek on the cover. Then we've got the spaceship from Lightspeed, Shadow of the Daleks #1. Then the side of the release, and the back of the release with the bios on each of the 4 stories and the cast list for this release, and the total running time being 120 minutes. So taking a look at the leaflet, we have production credits for this release. As you can see, advertisement for Doctor Who magazine, a photo of Peter Davison, and the next instalment of Shadow of the Daleks #2, and a bio on the 4 stories what feature within that. And we do have the reversible cover, and the disc art is exactly the same for both discs. Shadow of the Daleks 1 kicks off with Aimed at the Body by James Kettle, seeing the English cricketer Douglas Jardine, which the story centres around his character with Mrs Calderwell and her daughter Flora exploring the Australian desert as their tour guide Angus is missing with no water, and Douglas thinking this is a revenge by the Australians as he thinks the Australians have a vendetta against him. So things aren't looking good with them being marooned in the Australian desert. Enter the Doctor to the rescue. With the Doctor being in awe of meeting Douglas Jardine as the Doctor was on his way to the Adelaide Oval to watch the cricket. So we get a backstory on Douglas, so we have some wonderful sound design of this sort of whirling sound suggesting something isn't quite right with this strange metal statue appearing for a split second, and I think we can all guess what this mysterious statue is. Now the Daleks themselves in this story, the Dalek I should say because it's only one Dalek what features in this story, are slowly built up, so you start to get sort of the fear factor. And with them, with the Daleks saying, you know, I bring darkness and death, which is pretty chilling, with the Doctor offering Douglas and co to the rescue, with them heading to the TARDIS. But the TARDIS has disappeared as the geography of the land keeps shifting and changing as they find the tour guide Angus's body has been aged to death, with it being hundreds of years old. So the Doctor becomes even more concerned, trying to piece everything together. Now, one of the strong things about this story, besides the mystery, is the character moments, as this story has some lovely quiet character moments with the Doctor talking to everyone and focusing all on sort of Douglas, you know, how he's changed, acting odd as we continue to learn more on Douglas, and alarm bells ring for the Doctor as Douglas's voice changed to a very familiar voice where the Doctor knows. With the Doctor thinking, is this a trap for him and are the people even real? So the Doctor really does start questioning his surroundings. You know, why does the geography of the land keep shifting? And the resolution for this story is quite an interesting one. Now the Doctor begins his quest to follow the temporal trace to solve the mystery as he wants answers, with the Daleks taunting and speaking of darkness. So moving on to characters now, with the Doctor played by Peter Davison. Another brilliant performance with us seeing that sort of youthful English gent, which just gels right into the story, with him having admiration for Douglas and him questioning sort of his cricket tactics, leading to a wonderful speech of him comparing life to cricket. He's incredibly curious, you know, trying to piece everything together. But he does lose his temper, which is quite nice to see more of a flippant side to this more sort of youthful English gent Doctor, so it makes for some quite nice moments for Davison to sort of push his Doctor out of his comfort zone, really. Douglas, played by Jamie Parker, a fantastic performance, bringing this forceful, grumpy, arrogant character to life, with him being incredibly protective of his cricket tactics and him being quite standoff and quite confrontational. As the story progresses, we understand why he's like that, and very much the story does centre around him. Flora, played by Angie Mahindra, a superb performance, bringing the voice of reason, very much the peacekeeper of this story, with her having some great moments with the Doctor, and she's very inquisitive about everything going on around her. So yeah, very good performance by Angie Mahindra. Mrs Calderwell, played by Devala Kerwin, good performance, bringing this sort of calm, collected, motherly character to life, with her being sort of admiring the beauty of Australia and her concern for Douglas, as she has some really nice touching scenes with the Doctor. So what are my real thoughts on Aimed at the Body? Well, it's a solid start to Shadow of the Daleks, laying the foundations of the mystery of this series with it. You can definitely tell that it's setting something grand up, full of wonderful character interactions and lovely quiet character moments, and just a fun half-an-hour adventure, which I probably appreciated more on re-listen, because I enjoyed it when I first listened to it, but definitely when I revisited it for the review, I definitely enjoyed this story a little bit more. So overall, I'm going to give Aimed at the Body a 7.5 out of 10. So moving on to the second story, Lightspeed by Jonathan Morris. So we start off this story with this brilliant music score with the sort of trace leading the Doctor to this intergalactic flight, with the Doctor having a joke about never being able to escape air hostesses, with the Doctor recognising passengers and crew members from the previous adventure, with them being different people but with the same face. So this part of the story very much reminds me of how Midnight sort of started, with the Doctor sort of talking to Kathy and Yost, and the Doctor saying his fear of dying on a crashing spaceship, which I guess is a bit of a nice little nod to the caves of Androzani. But nothing is plain sailing, as the computer is acting odd, and the voices again seem to sound very familiar to the Doctor. So are the Daleks behind this, or are they a side effect of the computer acting out of revenge of the instruction from Rock Lucifer, which just sounds like an awesome villain name, with a revenge being to let the Doctor watch innocent people die and let the Doctor suffer, as the engine speed up, and if the engine slows down, then the ship will explode and the reactor will go critical. So the Doctor and Yost have to go to the engine room to find that the access to the TARDIS is blocked. So this story is very action-packed, as it's very much threat after threat. So it is very sort of a pacey story. Now the ship is travelling at light speed and is heading towards a asteroid field. So we have a great twist involving Kathy and, you know, what are these mysterious eggs in the flight hold. So the Doctor is very much the action hero of the story, of him confronting the sort of computer Orson. And we have a very clever resolution with the Doctor continuing his trail of temporal energy. So moving on to characters now, with the Doctor played by Peter Davison. Another brilliant performance, with him being very much the action hero, very urgent to stop the computer achieving its mission, and him sort of questioning and being very being very much a detective character, of him trying to link events from the previous story to now. Yost, played by Davella Kerwin, again another great performance, very much plays the sort of companion role, of her being the sort of flight hostess, with her sort of calming passengers down and being quite sarky and sort of being pretty bewildered by the Doctor. So it's a great addition and has some great moments between the Fifth Doctor. Orson, played by Glenn McCready, an excellent performance, bringing this sort of grand voice computer to life, with Orson being quite cold and vengeful and wanting to achieve revenge for Rock Lucifer. So yeah, a very nice little addition. Kathy, played by Angie Mahindra, a good performance by Angie Mahindra, with her being this sort of jokey, bumbly character. But as the story progresses, she has a bit of a character twist, which I'm not going to spoil, so I'll leave that for you to experience for yourself. So overall, what are my thoughts on Lightspeed? Well, Lightspeed is very much the action-packed story. This story is full of action, it's danger after danger, which makes it for a great contrast compared to the previous story, which was very sort of a calm, collected story. So it's a great sort of change up in pace. You know, it is a very pacey story and it doesn't hang around to get to the action. So overall, I'm going to give Lightspeed a well-deserved 7 out of 10. An incredible action sort of adventure story. So yeah, very good little addition to Shadow of the Daleks. The Bookshop at the End of the World by Simon Gurrier. What a superb story, with some wonderful sound design of a storm being mixed in with the sound of a war, which is brilliantly done, which really does set the story, but this story being set in this rather cosy little bookshop, with the Doctor appearing to have no memory of what's been going on and why he can't remember bits, but he can remember bits from various books. And throughout the story you have these sort of great little cutaways from the supporting characters, sort of, you know, having their inner thoughts, which is a really nice little addition to this story, and making you even more sort of confused like the Doctor. So I really do like that immersive nature, you know, the characters wondering, you know, why isn't the Doctor in uniform, why is the Doctor in trouble, you know, with the Doctor speaking of this war to end all wars, with time being ripped apart, and also the Doctor is looking for somebody. So this story has a real great mystery in it, and it is very ambiguous to what war it is. Is it the Time War, is it the First World War, as the poem hints, what features within this story, with the Doctor saying, you know, I'm not part of this war. And also this window, you know, why every time the Doctor gets closer, he becomes more scared and fearful. You know, the supporting characters as well are a great addition, as they're all sort of hiding. They all have their own secrets, which is wonderful, which gets explored throughout the half an hour of this little adventure. And also we have the thermostat, which the Doctor picks up straight away within the story, and that has a great little revelation to why that's significant to these characters towards the end of the story. Honestly, I don't really want to say too much about this story, because this story I think is incredibly rich, full of wonderful ideas, and this is a story I don't really want to spoil, so I don't want to spend too long on it, because this is the one that has a load of mysteries, and it's easy. This story is so easy to spoil, and I really don't want to spoil it because it has so many great moments within it. So moving on to the characters now. So the Doctor, Peter Davison, a wonderful performance with him being sort of dazed and confused, with him really playing on the sort of innocent, vulnerable side, and him being rather helpless, and him being quite anxious and acting like he has shell shock. So this gives Peter Davison something a little bit different to do with the Doctor within this story. So it makes for a nice little change and breaks the sort of monotony of the other two stories of him sort of going, oh, I recognise your face, you know, sort of that sort of stuff. So it kind of breaks up that form. Di, played by Devella Kerwell, a warm, friendly character who takes care of the Doctor and being the bookshop owner. And then you have Elroy, played by Glenn McCready, a good performance for him being this sort of snotty sort of character, being very sort of pessimistic and has a sense of duty and very confrontational with the Doctor, and sort of revels in people's pain and just enjoys belittling people. And he has quite an interesting role to play within this story. There's some great moments, especially the confrontational moment between the Doctor. So yeah, I'm not going to spoil that, because that is a very nice moment within this story. So what are my overall thoughts on the bookshop at the end of the world? It almost seems a bit like Good Omens in a way, the bookshop at the end of the world. This was a rich, full of mystery story. What really makes you think, you know, how does this fit into the grand picture of Shadow of the Daleks, with the talk of the war? You know, I think like this story really propels the story further, and I think that this story is so unique, and I love the ambiguous nature of this story, with it leaving for you to decide what war they're talking about. The supporting characters are all well realised, you know, and once you finish this story you instantly want to carry on. It's extremely well crafted for a half an hour adventure, so well done, Simon Gurrier. I'm going to give the bookshop at the end of the world a well-deserved 9 out of 10. Interlude by Dan Starkey, the halfway mark for Shadow of the Daleks, and what a perfect title for it, with the TARDIS flying through a storm shockwave, with it arriving in the city of culture, Florence. But time has shifted, with us getting a glimpse of a battle, with the TARDIS being taken to the Duke. So you wonder, who is this mysterious Duke? And the Doctor gets flung into meeting a group of players who are doing a play for the Duke's victory celebrations. But the Doctor keeps collapsing from these twinges in time. So this does lead to some quite funny, witty moments with the Doctor performing in a play, with the Doctor constantly questioning, you know, why does he keep constantly colliding into the same people with different personalities but the same face. We expand on this sort of new Florence, you know, why does the clock tower look like a missile silo, and why is this sort of mysterious motif of the Cyclops all around the city. And the room the Doctor is performing the play, you know, keeps sort of changing. You know, the Doctor starts, you know, piecing things together and linking them to other encounters with the Duke making his grand entrance, and it is time for the Doctor to perform, with him cutting to the chase as he sees a very familiar sight, a Dalek being the Duke executioner. With the room shrinking and collapsing in on itself, we have a really surprising twist, you know, who the Duke is, you know, and are the Daleks poisoning the time stream, as the Doctor has new coordinates, and the mystery continues. So moving on to characters now, the Doctor played by Peter Davison, another superb performance, with Peter Davison really getting some fantastic comedic witty moments within this story, but him having that sort of stern authority and fury when he's confronting the Dalek, with that sort of urgency to solve the mystery, and sort of is deeply troubled by the sort of time disruption, and becoming more perplexed, you know, why these people are constantly involved within his travel. Then we have Bianca, played by Angie Mahindra, very much a companion role, taking the Doctor under her wings, and being sort of this gung-ho, sort of feisty character. So what are my overall thoughts on Interlude? Well, it's a great little fun adventure, full of fun moments and surprising twists, as this part really does start pushing the story even further, but you still feel none the wiser. You feel like there's just more mystery being added and added to this story. So the mystery really does keep thickening. But I will say about this story, I would have loved the Royal Court to sort of been transformed and revealed to be the sort of Dalek Supreme Council room. I think that would have been a jaw-dropping cliffhanger. I can get why they didn't do it, because obviously this is halfway through the series, but I feel like that would have made for a real great cliffhanger. You know, the sort of the room shift and becomes the Dalek Supreme courtroom. I think that would have been absolutely lovely, sort of that council room. It would have been amazing. But yeah, I definitely did enjoy this one, and this story is very much the calm before the storm, and you start to get little tidbits of information, but still nothing to really picture the sort of grand scheme. So overall, I'm going to give Interlude a well-deserved 8 out of 10, a fun release, and a sort of a nice way to sort of conclude the first half of Shadow of the Dalek. So what are my concluding thoughts on Shadow of the Daleks number 1? Well, I think that it is very much laying down the foundations. It's pretty hard to judge it as a whole story yet, because this is only part 1 of the story, but I will definitely say that it is full of mystery, full of some very interesting stories. I think that the bookshop at the end of the world is definitely my personal standout story of this. You know, they're great little half-an-hour adventures, and I cannot wait to see how all of these 4 stories interlink into the grand picture of Shadow of the Daleks. And the Daleks themselves, if you're expecting a load of Dalek action, you're not going to get it. The Daleks, they barely feature within this release. They probably feature, you know, maybe 5 times within this release, and that's probably scattered across the 4 stories. I think the main sort of focus you get of the Daleks is in the first story and the last story. The Daleks sort of, they're more of a cameo role within this, and obviously in Shadow of the Daleks 2 we'll probably get more Dalek action, but this is very much laying down the foundations for this, and it's very intriguing. I think that's the best way to describe Shadow of the Daleks number 1. It's definitely an intriguing release, full of a lot of mystery, and the characters are all great. You know, the bookshop at the end of the world, I just think is a really great addition to the main range, and the other stories, they all have their own merits, and I definitely did enjoy listening to this, and I cannot wait to start listening to Shadow of the Daleks number 2. I'll hopefully review Shadow of the Daleks number 2 very soon. So thank you very much for watching this review. I hope you have enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time. So thank you very much, and goodbye.